The wooden stick trembled in Derek's raised hand as his pregnant wife cowered on the kitchen floor, her hands protecting her swollen belly. Blood trickled from Naomi's split lip while tears streamed down her beautiful brown face. Hit her harder. Bethany screamed from the doorway, her red hair wild with excitement. Make her understand who comes first in your life now. Derek's eyes were cold as winter as he looked down at Naomi, the woman who had loved him for 5 years, who carried his child, who had given up her dreams to support his. You embarrassed me in front of Bethany, he snarled. You called her what she is, a home-wrecking witch. Derek, please, Naomi whispered, struggling to stand. I'm 7 months pregnant with your baby. How can you do this to us? That baby might not even be mine, Derek spat, the words hitting Naomi harder than any physical blow could. Bethany laughed behind him, a sound like nails on glass. Your wife needs to learn respect, Bethany purred, walking closer. She was everything Naomi wasn't, pale, skinny, with calculating green eyes. Show her what happens when she disrespects me. Naomi's world spun as she realized this wasn't the man she married. This wasn't the Derek who once promised to protect her and their future children. This was a stranger, controlled by a woman who seemed to feed on destruction. The stick came down, missing Naomi by inches as she rolled away, her pregnant body awkward and slow. Derek, stop. Think about what you're doing. But Derek was already raising the stick again, his face twisted with a rage that seemed to come from somewhere dark and foreign. You ruined everything, he shouted. Bethany showed me what real love looks like and you're just in the way. Naomi managed to crawl toward the living room, her heart pounding so hard she feared for her baby. She could hear Bethany coaching Derek behind her. Don't let her run. Make her apologize. Make her promise to leave. The front door seemed miles away. Naomi's beautiful home, the one she had decorated with such love and hope, now felt like a prison. Pictures of their happy moments mocked her from the walls. The nursery she had spent weeks preparing upstairs seemed like a foolish dream. I gave you everything, Naomi gasped, turning to face them both. I worked 2 jobs to put you through business school, Derek. I believed in your dreams when no one else would. And now I don't need you anymore, Derek replied coldly. Bethany has connections. She can help my business grow in ways you never could. Bethany smiled like a snake. I told you she was dead weight, baby. Some women are meant to build men up and others. She looked at Naomi with disgust. Others just drag them down. The pain in Naomi's chest wasn't from the bruises forming on her ribs. It was the complete shattering of everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and the man she had pledged her life to. The Derek she married would have died before raising a hand to her. This Derek looked at her like she was nothing. Get out, Derek said quietly, but his words echoed like thunder. Pack your things and get out of my house. Our house, Naomi corrected weakly. I'm on the deed too. I helped pay for this place. Not anymore, Bethany said sweetly. Derek's been working with a lawyer. Funny how easy it is to transfer ownership when you know the right people. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. While Naomi had been planning their baby's future, Derek had been planning her destruction. While she picked out cribs and baby clothes, he had been stealing her home. My brothers will. Your brothers don't scare me, Derek interrupted. They're too busy running their companies to worry about their pathetic sister. That was Derek's first mistake. His biggest mistake. Because Cameron and Julian weren't just successful businessmen, they were protective brothers who would move mountains for their little sister. And Derek had just declared war on the wrong family. But Naomi didn't know that yet. All she knew was pain, betrayal, and the terrible realization that the life she thought she was building had been built on lies. As she struggled to her feet, her hand protectively over her belly, she made a silent promise to her unborn child. Somehow, someway they would both survive this. They would find a way to build a new life from the ashes of this one. She just didn't know that help was closer than she thought. 3 months earlier, Naomi had been the happiest woman alive. She remembered the morning she told Derek about the pregnancy, how she had decorated their bedroom with balloons and placed the positive test on his pillow. Derek had spun her around the room, both of them laughing and crying with joy. We're going to be parents, he had whispered against her forehead. Our baby is going to have the best life ever. Naomi had believed him completely. Why wouldn't she? Derek had been her college sweetheart, the ambitious business student who dreamed of opening his own consulting firm. She had been studying education, planning to teach, but when Derek's dreams demanded more financial support, she had gladly set aside her own goals. I'll teach later, she had told her brothers Cameron and Julian when they questioned her decision to leave school. Right now, Derek needs me to believe in his vision. Her brothers hadn't been thrilled, but they respected Naomi's choice. They had built their own empires from nothing, Cameron with his tech company and Julian with his real estate investments. They understood the sacrifice required for success, even if they worried about Derek taking advantage of their sister's generous heart. Naomi worked at a marketing firm during the day and waited tables at an upscale restaurant 3 nights a week. Every penny went toward Derek's business school tuition and their shared expenses. She was tired constantly, but she was happy. She was building a future with the man she loved. The first crack in her perfect world had appeared 6 months ago. Derek started staying late at networking events and weekend business seminars. When Naomi suggested joining him, he always had an excuse. It was boring, she wouldn't understand the business talk, she needed her rest. "Trust me, baby," he would say, kissing her cheek. "These events are deadly dull. I'm doing this for us, for our future." Naomi believed him because she wanted to. Because the alternative, that Derek might be lying, was too painful to consider. The changes started small. Derek began criticizing things that had never bothered him before. Her cooking wasn't as good as his colleagues' wives. Her clothes were too casual for someone dating a future business owner. Her laughter was too loud when they went out with his new business contacts. "I'm not trying to hurt your feelings," he would say after each criticism. "I just want us to be the kind of couple that succeeds in business circles." Naomi tried harder. She bought new clothes she couldn't afford, took cooking classes, practiced speaking more quietly. But nothing seemed to make Derek happy anymore. He grew distant, checking his phone constantly, taking calls in private. The night she discovered the affair, Naomi had gone to surprise Derek at one of his business dinners. She had spent her tip money from the restaurant on a new dress and had gotten her hair done. She wanted to show him she could be the polished wife he seemed to want. But when she arrived at the upscale hotel restaurant, she saw Derek through the window. He wasn't in a boring business meeting. He was holding hands across a candlelit table with a red-haired woman who was definitely not a business colleague. He was looking at this woman the way he used to look at Naomi, like she was the center of his universe. Naomi stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching the man she loved caress another woman's face. People walked past her, but she felt invisible, like she was watching her life end from outside her own body. She drove home in a daze and waited for Derek to return with his lies about the boring business dinner. When he walked in at midnight, smelling like perfume that wasn't hers, she almost said nothing. Part of her wanted to pretend she had never seen what she had seen. But their baby deserved better than a father who was a liar. "How was your business dinner?" she asked quietly. Derek didn't even look guilty. "Same as always. Boring conversations about market trends and profit margins. You didn't miss anything." "Who was there?" "Just some potential investors. No one you'd know." That was when Naomi knew their marriage was over. Not because Derek was having an affair, though that was devastating enough. But because he could lie to her face so easily, so completely, without even a flicker of remorse. She didn't confront him that night. She was 7 months pregnant, exhausted, and emotionally shattered. Instead, she lay awake planning how to save their marriage, how to win back the man she loved. She had no idea that Derek was already planning her destruction. She had no idea that the woman she had seen him with, Bethany, was poisoning his mind against her every day. And she had no idea that in 3 months she would be cowering on her kitchen floor while Derek raised a stick above her head. If she had known what was coming, Naomi might have called her brothers sooner. She might have realized that some marriages can't be saved, only survived. But love makes people foolish, and Naomi loved Derek more than she loved herself. At least she had. The weeks after discovering Derek's affair were a special kind of hell for Naomi. She tried everything to save their marriage. She cooked Derek's favorite meals, planned romantic evenings, and bit her tongue when he came home late smelling like Bethany's perfume. She told herself that once the baby was born, Derek would remember what really mattered. She was wrong. "I need space to think," Derek announced one evening, barely looking up from his phone. "Bethany thinks we're moving too fast with the baby planning." Naomi's blood froze. "Bethany thinks? Derek, I'm your wife. I'm carrying your child. Why does your affair partner get a vote in our family decisions?" Derek's face darkened. "Don't call her that. Bethany understands me in ways you never have. She sees my potential. I've been seeing your potential for 5 years." Naomi's voice broke. "I worked 2 jobs to support your dreams. I gave up my own education, my own career plans. And I never asked you to do that," Derek snapped. "Maybe if you had focused on improving yourself instead of just supporting me, you'd understand why successful men need partners who challenge them intellectually." The cruelty of his words hit Naomi like a physical blow. She had sacrificed everything for their shared future, and now Derek was rewriting history to make her sacrifices seem like personal failures. Derek, please. Let's go to counseling. Let's try to fix this. There's nothing to fix between you and me, Derek said coldly. The problem is that I've outgrown this relationship. Bethany showed me what it feels like to be with someone who matches my ambition. That night, Derek didn't come home at all. Naomi lay in their bed, one hand on her belly, talking to her unborn baby. I don't know what's happening to us, she whispered. But I promise you'll be loved. I promise I'll find a way to give you the life you deserve. The next morning, Naomi discovered that Derek had emptied their joint savings account. $23,000 her tip money, her salary, their baby's college fund gone. When she called Derek, he was matter-of-fact. I'm investing in a new business opportunity with Bethany. Don't worry, you'll get your share if it pays off. That money was for our baby's future. My baby will have plenty of opportunities, Derek said. I'm thinking bigger than a savings account now. Naomi hung up and called her bank. Derek had also removed her as an authorized user on their credit cards. She had exactly $47 in her personal checking account and a baby due in 8 weeks. For the first time since discovering the affair, Naomi considered calling her brothers. Cameron and Julian had always been her protectors, ever since their parents died in a car accident when Naomi was 16. But she was 28 now, married, supposedly building her own life. How could she admit that she had chosen so poorly? Pride kept her silent. Pride and shame and the desperate hope that Derek would come to his senses. 3 days later, Derek brought Bethany to their house. Naomi was folding baby clothes in the nursery when she heard unfamiliar laughter downstairs. She walked to the top of the stairs and saw Derek giving Bethany a tour of their home like he was a real estate agent. The master bedroom has great natural light, Derek was saying, and the baby's room could easily be converted to a home office. Bethany ran her fingers along the kitchen counters that Naomi had spent months choosing. I love the kitchen. We could entertain here. Real networking parties, not just family dinners. Derek. Naomi called from the stairs. What's going on? Derek looked up at her without shame or embarrassment. Bethany wanted to see the house. I told her how much work you put into decorating it. Bethany smiled up at Naomi with false sweetness. You have lovely taste. Very domestic. The word domestic hung in the air like an insult. Naomi gripped the banister, her pregnant body suddenly feeling impossibly heavy. This is our home, Naomi said quietly. The home we built together for our family. Actually, Derek said, pulling papers from his briefcase, I've been meaning to discuss that with you. My lawyer suggested some changes to the property ownership. Just to protect us legally as my business grows. Naomi's hands shook as she read the documents. Derek was transferring the house entirely into his name, claiming it was necessary for business asset protection. The papers needed her signature. I'm not signing this, Naomi said. Then you're going to cost us our home, Derek replied smoothly. If my business gets sued and you're on the deed, we could lose everything. But if it's just in my name, it's protected. Bethany nodded sympathetically. It's so smart to plan ahead. Some wives don't understand business strategy. That night, Derek didn't ask Naomi to sign the papers. He forged her signature. Naomi discovered the forgery 2 weeks later when she tried to refinance their mortgage to access equity for baby expenses. The bank informed her that she was no longer on the deed. The house was solely in Derek's name, had been for weeks. When she confronted Derek, he didn't deny it. I did what was necessary, he said. You would have been difficult about it. I'm your wife. You stole our house from me. I protected our assets, Derek corrected. And if you keep making scenes like this, Bethany thinks you should consider finding somewhere else to stay until the baby comes. That was the moment Naomi finally understood. Derek wasn't having an affair that might end. Derek wasn't going through a phase that he might outgrow. Derek had chosen Bethany over his wife and child, and he was systematically destroying Naomi's life to make room for his new one. But she still didn't call her brothers. She still believed she could handle this alone. That was her biggest mistake. Cameron had always been able to sense when Naomi was in trouble. As the oldest sibling, he had appointed himself her protector when their parents died. Julian, only 2 years older than Naomi, had been her partner in mischief and her closest friend. But Cameron, at 35, was the steady presence who fixed problems and handled crises. So when 3 weeks passed without Naomi returning his calls, Cameron knew something was seriously wrong. She's probably just busy with baby preparations, Julian suggested during their weekly business lunch. You know how she gets when she has a project. Cameron shook his head. Naomi calls me every Sunday. She hasn't missed a Sunday call in 10 years. Something's wrong. Julian frowned. His tech empire and Cameron's real estate investments often competed for attention, but they never disagreed about Naomi. Their little sister was the one thing they were both fiercely protective of. Have you talked to Derek? Julian asked. I tried. He said she was resting, doctor's orders. But he sounded off. Off how? Cameron couldn't articulate it, but Derek's voice had been cold, distracted. Nothing like the enthusiastic father-to-be who had called them excitedly about ultrasound appointments and nursery themes just months before. I'm driving over there, Cameron decided. I'll come with you. They arrived at Naomi's house at 3 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Derek's car was in the driveway along with an unfamiliar red BMW. The front yard, usually immaculate thanks to Naomi's gardening hobby, was overgrown and littered with fast food containers. Cameron rang the doorbell twice before Derek answered. His brother-in-law looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled clothes, red-rimmed eyes. But what struck Cameron most was Derek's expression when he saw them. Guilt mixed with panic. Cameron, Julian. What are you doing here? We came to see Naomi, Julian said. Is she home? Derek hesitated too long. She's sleeping. The pregnancy has been difficult lately. We'll wait, Cameron said, stepping past Derek into the house. The living room was a disaster. Empty pizza boxes, beer bottles, women's clothing that definitely didn't belong to Naomi scattered across furniture. The beautiful home their sister had created looked like a college party aftermath. Derek, Cameron's voice was dangerously quiet. Where is our sister? Before Derek could answer, a red-haired woman emerged from the kitchen wearing one of Derek's shirts and nothing else. She stopped when she saw Cameron and Julian, but she didn't look embarrassed. She looked annoyed. I thought you said she was sleeping, Julian said. She is, Derek stammered. This is Bethany, my business partner. Bethany smiled and extended her hand. I've heard so much about Naomi's brothers. Derek's told me all about your successful companies. Neither Cameron nor Julian took her hand. Where is Naomi? Cameron repeated. I'm here. They turned to see their sister at the top of the stairs, and Cameron's heart nearly stopped. Naomi was 8 months pregnant now, but she looked like she had lost weight everywhere except her belly. Her usually glowing brown skin was ashen, her eyes hollow. But it was the bruises on her arms and the fading mark on her cheek that made Cameron's vision go red. Baby girl, Julian whispered. What happened to you? Naomi started down the stairs slowly, one hand on the railing, one on her belly. She was wearing an oversized sweatshirt and loose pants, but Cameron could see the careful way she moved, like someone trying to protect injured ribs. I'm fine, Naomi said automatically. Just pregnancy stuff. Pregnancy doesn't cause bruises on your face, Cameron said, his eyes never leaving Derek. She fell, Derek said quickly. She's been clumsy lately, you know how pregnancy affects balance. Cameron had built his tech empire by reading people, by seeing the truth behind polite lies and business facades. Derek was lying. Badly. Pack a bag, Cameron told Naomi quietly. You're coming home with us. She can't, Bethany interrupted. Derek needs her here. They have so much to work through before the baby comes. Julian turned to stare at Bethany like she was an interesting bug he might step on. I'm sorry, who are you again? Besides someone who's wearing my brother-in-law's shirt in my sister's house. Bethany is helping me with some business decisions, Derek said. Naomi's been emotional lately. Pregnancy hormones. She doesn't understand the opportunities we're building. Cameron looked at his sister, really looked at her. The bruises, the exhaustion, the way she flinched when Derek moved too quickly. The way she wouldn't meet his eyes. Naomi, Cameron said gently. Come here. She walked to him slowly, and Cameron wrapped his arms around her carefully, feeling how thin she had become under the oversized clothes. Are you safe here? He whispered against her ear. Naomi's body began to shake against his chest. That was all the answer he needed. Julian, help Naomi pack a bag, Cameron said without taking his eyes off Derek. She's leaving now. She's not going anywhere, Derek said, and for the first time, his voice held a note of real threat. This is my house, my wife. You can't just take her. Cameron smiled, and Derek took an involuntary step backward. Cameron's smile was polite, professional, and absolutely terrifying. Actually, Derek, I think you'll find that we can do whatever is necessary to protect our sister. The question is whether you're going to make this easy or difficult. Bethany laughed. You can't intimidate us. Derek has important business connections now. People who won't appreciate interference. Cameron turned his attention to Bethany and she stopped laughing. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Cameron said quietly. But you're going to learn. 20 minutes later, Naomi was in Julian's car with a bag of essentials, driving away from the house she had loved. As they pulled out of the driveway, Cameron was already making phone calls. Derek and Bethany had no idea what they had just started. They thought they were dealing with an overprotective family member who would eventually back down. They were wrong. Cameron and Julian weren't just successful businessmen. They were men who had built empires from nothing, who understood power and how to use it. And they had just declared war on the people who had hurt their sister. The battle was about to begin. Cameron's penthouse apartment overlooked the city like a command center, which was exactly what it became the night Naomi came home. While Julian helped their sister settle into the guest room, Cameron stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, phone pressed to his ear, already working. I need everything you can find on Derek Washington and Bethany. He paused. Naomi, what's Bethany's last name? Morrison, Naomi called from the bedroom where Julian was helping her unpack. Bethany Morrison, Cameron continued to his head of security. Financial records, business connections, criminal background, credit history. I want to know what they had for breakfast 3 months ago. Julian emerged from the bedroom and found Cameron at his laptop, already pulling up databases and business records. How is she? Exhausted. Scared. Trying to pretend she's fine. Julian's jaw was tight with anger. There are bruises on her back too, Cameron. Recent ones. Cameron's typing stopped. How recent? Days, maybe a week. For a moment, the only sound in the apartment was the hum of city traffic 30 floors below. Then Cameron stood up, walked to his bar and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to Julian. They think they can hurt our sister and get away with it, Cameron said quietly. They're wrong, Julian replied. They drank in silence, both men thinking. Cameron was methodical, strategic. He would have made an excellent military general in another life. Julian was creative, intuitive. He saw opportunities and connections that others missed. Together, they had helped each other build 2 of the most successful companies in the city. Now they were going to use every skill they had learned to destroy the people who had hurt Naomi. Tell me about Derek's business, Cameron said, pulling up a notepad. Julian sat down across from him. Small consulting firm, maybe 15 employees. He specializes in helping restaurants optimize their operations. Decent client base, but nothing spectacular. Weaknesses. Cash flow. Most small businesses struggle with steady income. And from what Naomi told me, Derek's been making some big investments lately. Cameron made notes. The money he stole from their account? Among other things. He's been living beyond his means, trying to impress this Bethany woman. What about Bethany? What do we know? Julian pulled out his phone. I did some quick research while you were on the phone. She's interesting. No steady employment history, but she always seems to have money. She's been married twice, both to successful men. Both ex-husbands ended up bankrupt after the divorces. She has a pattern. Cameron looked up from his notes. A pattern of what? Seducing married men, convincing them to leave their wives, then taking everything in the breakup. Julian's voice was grim. She's a professional homewrecker. And Derek doesn't know this? Derek thinks he's special. Bethany probably told him his previous wives didn't understand him, didn't appreciate his potential. Classic manipulation. Cameron stood up and began pacing. This was how his mind worked. He needed to move while he planned. So Derek is being played, but he's also actively hurting Naomi. That makes him complicit. Agreed. What's our approach? Cameron stopped pacing and looked at his brother. We destroy them both, but differently. Derek needs to lose everything, his business, his money, his reputation. He needs to understand what it feels like to have someone tear apart everything you've built. And Bethany? Bethany needs to be exposed for what she is. Her scam only works in the shadows. Once everyone knows her pattern, she loses her power. Julian nodded slowly. How do we do this without it blowing back on Naomi? Very carefully. And we make sure Derek can never hurt her again. Cameron's phone buzzed with a text. He read it and smiled grimly. My security team found something interesting already. What? Derek's been lying to his business clients about his qualifications. He claims to have a master's degree from Northwestern. He never graduated from undergraduate school. Julian whistled low. Business fraud. If we can prove he used fake credentials to get clients, yes. That's not just civil liability, that's criminal charges. What else? Cameron pulled up his laptop again. His business license expired 6 months ago. He's been operating illegally. And probably not reporting income properly if he's that sloppy with paperwork. Exactly. Cameron was typing rapidly now. I'm sending all this to my attorney. We need to know what legal options we have. Julian stood up and walked to the window. The city sparkled below them, millions of people living their lives, unaware of the war being planned in this apartment. Cameron, we need to be smart about this. Derek might be a cheating, abusive loser, but he's still Naomi's baby's father. Cameron's fingers paused over the keyboard. What are you saying? I'm saying we destroy him, but we make sure the baby is protected. Naomi's going to need financial support for the child, even if Derek loses everything. Cameron nodded slowly. Child support can be garnished from wages even if he declares bankruptcy. We make sure he always has a job, just not a good one. And we document everything about the abuse. If Derek ever tries to get custody, he'll have to explain those bruises to a judge. Cameron's voice was cold. Along with everything else we're going to uncover. They worked until dawn, building their strategy piece by piece. By the time Naomi woke up, her brothers had created a comprehensive plan to dismantle Derek and Bethany's lives brick by brick. Cameron made coffee while Julian checked on their sister. She looked better after a full night's sleep, but the bruises were more visible in the morning light. How are you feeling? Julian asked. Like I've been living in a nightmare for months, Naomi admitted. But also, relieved. I didn't realize how scared I was until I wasn't scared anymore. Cameron brought her coffee and sat down beside her. Naomi, we need to ask you some questions. About Derek, about what he's done. Some of it might be hard to talk about. Naomi nodded. I want him to pay for what he did. I want them both to pay. They will, Julian promised. But we need to do this right. We need to be methodical. For the next 2 hours, Naomi told them everything. The financial abuse, the emotional manipulation, the escalating violence. Cameron took careful notes while Julian recorded everything on his phone. By the time they finished, Cameron and Julian had enough information to destroy Derek Washington completely. They just had to be patient enough to do it properly. The war had begun, but it would be fought with precision, not passion. Derek and Bethany would never see it coming. Derek noticed the first sign of trouble on a Thursday morning when his biggest client called to cancel their contract. I'm sorry, Derek, but we've decided to go with a different consulting firm, Richard Torres from Torres Restaurant Group explained. We need someone with more extensive credentials. Derek frowned, shifting his phone to his other ear. Richard, we've been working together for 2 years. My strategies increased your profit margins by 30%. I know, and we appreciate that. But we need someone with formal qualifications for this expansion. Someone with advanced degrees and proper certifications. After Derek hung up, he sat staring at his phone. Torres Restaurant Group was his biggest account. They represented 40% of his monthly revenue. Losing them was a serious blow, but not catastrophic. These things happened in business. He called Bethany to vent. Don't worry about it, baby, she purred over the phone. You don't need them. We're building something bigger now, remember? That investment opportunity one told you about is going to make us both rich. Derek smiled. Bethany always knew how to make him feel better. She believed in his potential in ways Naomi never had. The second sign came Friday afternoon when Martinez Family Restaurants called with the same news. They were going in a different direction and needed a consultant with more comprehensive qualifications. Derek began to feel uneasy. 2 major clients in 2 days seemed like more than coincidence. By Tuesday of the following week, Derek had lost 6 clients. Not just new prospects, established accounts that had been with him for months or years. I don't understand, Derek told Bethany over dinner at an expensive restaurant he could no longer afford. It's like someone is poisoning them against me. Maybe it's Naomi, Bethany suggested, cutting her steak delicately. She's probably bitter about our relationship. Pregnant women can be vindictive. Derek considered this. Naomi had never shown any interest in his business before, but desperate people did desperate things. And Naomi had to be desperate after he'd asked her to leave. What Derek didn't know was that Cameron had spent the previous week having very polite conversations with restaurant owners throughout the city. Cameron's approach was simple and devastating. He would schedule a lunch meeting with Derek's clients, introducing himself as a fellow business owner interested in discussing industry trends. During these conversations, Cameron would casually mention how important proper credentials were in consulting work. You know, Cameron would say thoughtfully, I was just reading about a lawsuit where a restaurant got sued because their consultant didn't have proper qualifications to make safety recommendations. The consultant's fake degree came out during discovery. The restaurant lost millions. Then Cameron would pause, looking concerned. I'm sure you've verified your consultant's credentials, of course, but you might want to double-check just to be safe. These days, it's so easy to fake qualifications online. Cameron never mentioned Derek by name. He didn't have to. Every restaurant owner went back to their office and immediately looked up Derek's claimed qualifications. What they found was that Northwestern University had no record of Derek Washington ever earning a master's degree. Most discovered that Derek had never even completed his undergraduate program. The calls started coming immediately. Meanwhile, Julian was attacking Derek's business from a different angle. As one of the city's most successful real estate developers, Julian had connections with every major supplier and vendor in the restaurant industry. Julian's conversations were even more subtle than Cameron's. "Hey Mike," Julian would say to the owner of a major restaurant supply company. "I just wanted to give you a heads up about something. My sister was married to a guy who's been operating his consulting business without proper licenses. Derek Washington, you might know him. Anyway, she mentioned that he's been really careless about paperwork and legal requirements. Just thought you should know in case any of your clients are working with him. You know how legal liability can spread to vendors if there's ever a lawsuit." Within a week, every major supplier in the city had quietly stopped recommending Derek's services to their restaurant clients. Derek's phone, which used to ring constantly with new business inquiries, fell silent. By the end of the second week, Derek was panicking. His monthly income had dropped by 70%. He had bills coming due, office rent, employee salaries, business insurance, and no money to pay them. "This has to be more than coincidence," Derek told Bethany as they sat in his office, surrounded by unpaid invoices. "Someone is sabotaging me." "Who would do that?" Bethany asked, but Derek noticed she seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly. "Maybe Naomi's brothers," Derek said slowly. "They never liked me." Bethany looked up sharply. "Her brothers? The ones who came to the house? What do they do for work?" "Cameron runs some tech company and Julian is in real estate. But they're not that successful. They drive nice cars, but lots of people lease nowadays." Bethany's face had gone pale. "Derek, what are their last names?" "Same as Naomi's. Cameron and Julian Mitchell." "Why?" Bethany stared at him like he had just told her he was related to the devil himself. "Derek, do you have any idea who Cameron and Julian Mitchell are?" "Naomi's brothers. We've established that. Cameron Mitchell is the CEO of Mitchell Technologies. It's worth over $200 million. Julian Mitchell owns Mitchell Properties. He's developed half the high-end buildings in this city." Bethany's voice was getting higher. "Derek, you didn't tell me your wife's brothers were millionaires." Derek felt like the room was spinning. "That's impossible. Naomi never mentioned money. She worked as a waitress. She took the bus to work. Because she didn't need their money." Bethany snapped. She had a husband who was supposed to provide for her. For the first time since meeting Bethany, Derek began to understand what he might have lost. If Naomi's brothers were that successful, why had she hidden it? Why had she worked 2 jobs and lived so modestly? The answer came to him slowly, because she hadn't wanted Derek to feel inferior. She had wanted him to succeed on his own merit, to build something he could be proud of. And he had thrown it all away for a woman who was now looking at him like he was a complete fool. "We need to fix this," Derek said desperately. "I need to call Naomi, apologize, work things out." "It's too late for that," Bethany said quietly. "If her brothers are behind this, they're just getting started." Derek's phone rang. It was his landlord calling about the overdue office rent. As Derek took the call, Bethany was already calculating how quickly she could distance herself from this disaster. She had thought Derek was a rising businessman with real potential. Instead, he was a small-time loser who had somehow managed to make enemies of 2 of the most powerful men in the city. This was not the kind of mistake Bethany made twice. But Derek and Bethany's troubles were just beginning. Cameron and Julian had spent weeks planning their revenge, and they had barely started implementing it. The Mitchell brothers were patient, methodical, and absolutely ruthless when protecting their family. Derek was about to learn exactly what that meant. While Derek was losing his business piece by piece, Bethany Morrison was discovering that her past had finally caught up with her. The first warning came from an unexpected source, her hairdresser. "Honey," said Tina, the salon owner who had been styling Bethany's red hair for 6 months, "I hate to bring this up, but some ladies were in here yesterday asking questions about you." Bethany looked up sharply from her phone. What kind of questions? About your divorce. About that husband you had a few years back, the one who owned the electronic stores. Tina lowered her voice. They knew details, Beth. Details I never told nobody. Bethany's blood ran cold. What did these women look like? Professional. Expensive clothes. They said they were doing research for some kind of business network. Checking references for potential partners. After leaving the salon, Bethany sat in her car and tried to think. Only 3 people knew the real details about her divorce from Robert Chin, her second husband. Herself, Robert, and the private investigator she had hired to dig up dirt on him. But somehow, these mysterious women knew information that should have been confidential. Bethany's phone rang. It was Derek and he sounded terrible. Bethany, I just lost another client. That's 9 this week. I think we need to talk about your investment opportunity. I need that money to keep my business afloat. About that, Bethany said carefully. There might be a small delay with the investment funds. The other partners are being cautious. There were no other partners. There was no investment opportunity. There was just the money Derek had stolen from his joint account with Naomi, which Bethany had already spent on clothes, jewelry, and expensive dinners. But Derek didn't need to know that yet. How long of a delay? Derek's voice was desperate. Maybe a few weeks. But don't worry, baby. We'll figure this out together. After hanging up, Bethany drove home to her expensive apartment, the one Derek was paying for, and poured herself a large glass of wine. She needed to think. The next morning, Bethany's world began to crumble in earnest. She woke up to 17 missed calls from various credit card companies. When she called the first one back, she learned that someone had reported fraudulent activity on her account. Ma'am, we've received information suggesting that you may be using a false social security number, the customer service representative explained. We're temporarily freezing your account until we can verify your identity. That's ridiculous, Bethany snapped. I've had this card for 3 years. Yes, ma'am. But the social security number you provided belongs to someone else. Someone who died in 2019. Bethany hung up immediately. She had been using her first husband's social security number for certain financial transactions. It was easier than dealing with the bad credit she had accumulated under her real name. But someone had clearly done their research and exposed her fraud. By noon, all 5 of her credit cards were frozen. Her bank account was under investigation. And her apartment management company had called to inform her that they were reviewing her application for potential misrepresentations. That afternoon, Bethany got a visitor. The woman who knocked on her door was elegant, professional, and completely unfamiliar. She introduced herself as Patricia Williams, a private investigator. Ms. Morrison, I represent several clients who have questions about your financial activities. I was hoping we could have a conversation. I don't know what you're talking about, Bethany said, trying to close the door. Patricia smiled and handed her a business card. I think you do. You see, my clients are very thorough. They've been in touch with your ex-husbands, your former employers, your credit card companies, and several of the married men you've befriended over the years. Bethany's hands began to shake. What do you want? Just information. You see, there's a pattern to your relationships, Ms. Morrison. You target successful married men, convince them to leave their wives, gain access to their finances, and then disappear when things get complicated. Patricia's voice was calm, conversational. My clients are curious about how many times you've done this. You can't prove anything. Actually, we can. Robert Chin kept excellent records. So did Thomas Bradley. Both of your ex-husbands have been very cooperative once they realized they weren't your only victims. Patricia pulled out a folder thick with documents. Shall we start with the identity theft? Using a dead man's social security number is a federal crime, Ms. Morrison. Bethany slammed the door, but she could hear Patricia's voice through the wood. I'll leave my card. When you're ready to discuss this reasonably, please call. My clients prefer to handle things quietly, but they're prepared to involve law enforcement if necessary. That evening, Bethany called Derek in a panic. We need to talk, she said. Can you come over? Derek arrived an hour later looking haggard. His business was failing, his wife had left him, and now Bethany seemed to be falling apart too. What's wrong? He asked. Bethany poured herself another glass of wine, her 4th of the day. Derek, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest. Your wife's brothers, exactly how powerful are they? I told you they're successful, but... Derek. Bethany's voice was sharp with panic. I need specifics. What are their companies worth? Who do they know? What kind of connections do they have? Derek stared at her. Bethany, what's going on? Someone is investigating me. Professional investigators who know things they shouldn't know. They have financial records, legal documents, information about my past relationships. Bethany began pacing. This isn't some bitter ex-wife trying to cause trouble. This is serious money paying for serious people. Derek sank into her couch. Cameron and Julian always protected Naomi. Even when we were dating, they made it clear they were watching me. And you never thought to mention that your wife's family might retaliate if you hurt her? I didn't think they cared that much. Derek protested. Naomi never acted like she came from money. She worked regular jobs, lived modestly, because she was trying to make you feel good about yourself. Bethany screamed. She was letting you be the provider while her brothers could have bought and sold your entire business with pocket change. Derek looked at Bethany's panicked face and finally understood what they were really dealing with. This wasn't about a bitter divorce or a custody dispute. This was about two extremely wealthy, extremely powerful men who believed someone had hurt their little sister. And they were right. What do we do? Derek asked weakly. Bethany finished her wine and looked at Derek with disgust. Derek, you got me into this mess by lying about your wife's family. You deal with it. But I thought we were building a future together. Bethany laughed bitterly. With what money? Your business is dead, your credit is probably ruined, and you've made enemies of people who could destroy us both without breaking a sweat. She stood up and walked to her bedroom. I'm packing. I suggest you figure out how to fix this mess before it gets worse. Bethany, wait. But Bethany was already pulling suitcases from her closet. She had been in tight spots before, but never anything like this. The Mitchell brothers had resources and patience that her previous targets lacked. They were systematically destroying her life piece by piece, and they were probably just getting started. For the first time in her career as a professional homewrecker, Bethany Morrison was genuinely afraid. And Derek was finally alone with the consequences of his choices. Derek's business died on a Tuesday morning in November, 3 weeks before Naomi's due date. He sat in his empty office, staring at eviction notices and collection demands spread across his desk. His employees had quit when their paychecks started bouncing. His office landlord had changed the locks after Derek missed 3 rent payments. His business insurance had been canceled for non-payment. The final blow came in the form of an audit notice from the state business licensing department. Mr. Washington, the inspector explained as she reviewed his files, you've been operating without a valid license for 8 months. Additionally, we've received reports that you may have misrepresented your qualifications to clients. Derek watched helplessly as the inspector documented violation after violation. Operating without a license, false advertising, possible fraud. Each infraction carried heavy fines that Derek had no way to pay. What happens now? Derek asked. Your business is officially shut down pending investigation. If criminal charges are filed, you'll be notified. The inspector packed up her papers with the efficiency of someone who had seen this kind of thing many times before. I'd suggest getting a lawyer, Mr. Washington. After the inspector left, Derek sat alone in his former office. Everything he had worked for was gone. Everything he had sacrificed his marriage for was worthless. His phone rang. It was his landlord at the house that had been Naomi's home. Derek, we need to talk about the mortgage, Mr. Patterson said. You've missed 2 payments and the bank is getting nervous. Derek closed his eyes. I'll have the money soon. My business is just going through a rough patch. Derek, the bank ran a credit check yesterday. Your business license has been revoked. Your credit score has dropped 300 points in a month. They're talking about foreclosure. After hanging up, Derek drove home to find a red BMW in his driveway. Bethany was loading suitcases into her car while talking animatedly on her phone. No, I understand completely, she was saying. You can't be associated with this kind of scandal. I'll find somewhere else to stay. Derek got out of his car slowly. Going somewhere? Bethany turned to face him, and Derek was shocked by how different she looked. The confident, seductive woman who had convinced him to leave his wife was gone. In her place was someone who looked desperate and afraid. My friend in Chicago offered me a place to stay, Bethany said without meeting his eyes. Just until things calmed down. Things? What things? Bethany laughed bitterly. Derek, open your eyes. Your business is destroyed. Your credit is ruined. Your house is being foreclosed on. And tomorrow, there's going to be a very interesting article in the business section of the newspaper. What article? About predatory consultants who use fake credentials to defraud restaurants. About women who target married men and convince them to abandon their families. Bethany slammed her trunk shut. Someone leaked everything to a reporter. Everything, Derek. My real name, my previous marriages, the men I've helped through difficult divorces. Derek felt the world spinning around him. Who would do that? Who do you think? Bethany snapped. Your wife's brothers have been playing chess while we were playing checkers. They didn't just want to ruin your business. They wanted to ruin your reputation, your future, your ability to ever hurt anyone again. But you're leaving me, Derek said weakly. Derek, I'm a professional. I target successful men with money and potential. You're broke, unemployed, and about to be famous for all the wrong reasons. Bethany got into her car. Find yourself a different kind of woman. Preferably one whose family isn't worth more than small countries. As Bethany drove away, Derek stood in his driveway and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. 3 months ago, he had been a successful businessman with a loving wife and a baby on the way. Now he was unemployed, facing criminal charges, and about to lose his house. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Derek, this is Cameron Mitchell. We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Park, North Entrance, 1 hour. Come alone. Derek's hands shook as he read the message. He had been wondering when Naomi's brothers would confront him directly. Part of him was almost relieved that the waiting was over. An hour later, Derek found Cameron sitting on a bench overlooking the river. Cameron was wearing an expensive suit and looked completely relaxed, like a man who had just finished a successful business meeting. Thank you for coming, Cameron said politely as Derek approached. Derek sat down carefully, leaving space between them. I suppose you're here to gloat. Actually, I'm here to offer you a choice, Cameron said. You see, Derek, my brother and I have spent considerable time and money destroying your life. We've been very thorough. Cameron pulled out a tablet and showed Derek a comprehensive list. Every client lost, every financial account frozen, every legal violation documented. Impressive work, Derek said bitterly. We're not done, Cameron continued. Tomorrow the newspaper article goes live. By next week, every restaurant owner in the state will know your name and your story. You'll never work in consulting again. Derek stared at the river. What's the choice you mentioned? You can disappear, Cameron said simply. Leave the state. Start over somewhere else with a different career. Keep a low profile and never contact Naomi or her child again. And if I don't? Cameron's smile was polite and terrifying. Then we continue. Criminal charges. Bankruptcy proceedings. Civil lawsuits from every client you defrauded. We'll make sure your name is associated with failure and fraud for the rest of your life. Derek was quiet for a long moment. What about my child? You'll pay child support. We've arranged for you to have a job in another state, nothing glamorous but steady income. The payments will be automatically deducted from your wages. You've arranged a job for me? We want to make sure Naomi and the baby are provided for. You'll work, you'll pay support, and you'll stay away. Cameron stood up. It's more generous than you deserve, Derek. Derek looked up at Cameron. Why? Why not just destroy me completely? Because my sister loved you once. Because that baby deserves financial support. And because complete destruction would be satisfying for us but not necessarily helpful for Naomi. Cameron straightened his tie. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the choice is made for you. As Cameron walked away, Derek sat alone by the river and faced the reality of his situation. He had lost everything, his business, his wife, his home, his reputation, his future in this city. But he was still alive, and Cameron was offering him a chance to start over somewhere else. It was more mercy than Derek had shown Naomi when he raised that stick above her head. For the first time in months, Derek made the right choice. The next morning, Derek Washington left the city forever, driving toward a new state and a new life that would be smaller, humbler, and completely separate from the family he had destroyed. Behind him, he left only debts, court papers, and the memory of what happened when someone hurt a Mitchell. Naomi's daughter was born on a snowy December morning, 3 weeks after Derek disappeared from their lives forever. She's perfect, Julian whispered, holding his niece for the first time. The tiny baby girl had Naomi's warm brown skin and Derek's nose, but her eyes were entirely her own, bright, alert, and curious about the world. What are you going to name her? Cameron asked, gently stroking the baby's tiny hand with his finger. Naomi looked down at her daughter with love that felt bigger than her entire body. Hope, she said simply. Her name is Hope. Cameron and Julian exchanged a look over their sister's head. After everything Naomi had been through, naming her daughter Hope felt like a declaration of victory over the darkness Derek had brought into their lives. The first few weeks of Hope's life were a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Naomi had moved into a beautiful apartment that Cameron had bought for her. Not charity, he insisted, but an investment in his niece's future. Julian had furnished the nursery with everything a baby could possibly need. "You don't have to do all this," Naomi protested as Julian assembled yet another expensive baby contraption. "We're not doing it for you," Julian said with a grin. "We're doing it for Hope. She's going to be the most spoiled niece in history." But beyond the material support, what Naomi treasured most was having her family close again. Cameron worked from home several days a week just to spend time with Hope. Julian rearranged his schedule to help with night feedings. Both brothers treated Naomi like she was recovering from a war, which in many ways she was. "I keep waiting for Derek to call," Naomi admitted one evening as she fed Hope while Cameron cooked dinner. "I know he's gone, but part of me still expects him to try to come back." "He won't," Cameron said quietly. "He knows better now." Naomi looked at her older brother carefully. "What exactly did you and Julian do to him?" Cameron paused in his cooking. "Do you really want to know?" Naomi thought about it. "I want to know that he can't hurt us anymore." "He can't," Cameron said firmly. "Derek is in Oregon now working at a small accounting firm. His wages are garnished for child support, which comes to you automatically every month. He signed legal documents promising never to contact you or Hope. If he violates that agreement, he goes to prison." "And Bethany?" "Bethany is in Chicago, working as a hostess at a chain restaurant. Her days of seducing wealthy married men are over. We made sure everyone in her social circle knows exactly what she is." Naomi shifted Hope to her shoulder and patted her back gently. "I should feel sorry for them, shouldn't I? But I don't." "You don't have to feel sorry for people who try to destroy you," Julian said from the doorway. "You just have to focus on building something better." And that's exactly what Naomi did. 3 months after Hope was born, Naomi made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She enrolled in online classes to finish her education degree. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Cameron asked as Naomi showed him her class schedule. "You could wait until Hope is older." "I've been waiting long enough," Naomi said firmly. "I put my dreams on hold for Derek, but I won't put them on hold for fear." Naomi threw herself into her studies with the same determination that had once driven her to work 2 jobs for Derek's dreams. But this time the work was for herself and her daughter. The hardest part wasn't the coursework or managing schoolwork around a baby's schedule. The hardest part was learning to trust her own judgment again after Derek had spent months convincing her that she was stupid, worthless, and incapable of making good decisions. "I keep second-guessing everything," Naomi told her therapist during one of their weekly sessions. "What if I'm wrong about going back to school? What if I'm not smart enough? What if I'm being selfish by taking time away from Hope?" "Those are Derek's voices in your head," Dr. Martinez replied gently. "Your real voice, the one that got you through years of abuse and still managed to protect your daughter, that voice knows exactly what you're capable of." Slowly, week by week, Naomi began to trust herself again. She excelled in her education classes, particularly in child development and early childhood education. Her professors were impressed by her insights and her passion for creating safe learning environments for children. "You have a natural gift for this," Professor Williams told her after class one day. "Have you considered specializing in trauma-informed education? Working with children who have experienced difficult home situations?" Naomi thought about Hope, about the kind of world she wanted her daughter to grow up in. "Yes," she said. "I think I'd like that very much." By Hope's first birthday, Naomi had completed her degree and accepted a position at a progressive elementary school that specialized in supporting children from challenging backgrounds. The job came with good benefits, flexible hours, and the deep satisfaction of work that mattered. Cameron and Julian threw Hope a birthday party that was ridiculously elaborate for a 1-year-old. The guest list included Naomi's new colleagues, neighbors from her apartment building, and several single mothers Naomi had met in her parenting groups. "Look at this," Julian said to Cameron as they watched Naomi laugh with her new friends while Hope toddled around the room, charming everyone she met. 6 months ago, she was afraid to leave the house. Now she's building a whole new community. "She's stronger than she ever knew," Cameron agreed. "Derek tried to break her, but he just revealed how unbreakable she really is." As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Naomi found herself standing on her balcony with Hope in her arms, looking out at the city lights. "You know what, baby girl?" she whispered to her daughter. "We're going to be just fine. Better than fine. We're going to be happy." Hope giggled and clapped her hands as if she understood exactly what her mother meant. Behind them, through the sliding glass door, Cameron and Julian were cleaning up wrapping paper and storing leftover cake. Her brothers who had fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself. Her brothers who had helped her remember that she deserved love that built her up instead of tearing her down. Naomi had lost a husband and a house and the future she thought she wanted. But she had gained something infinitely more valuable. The knowledge that she could survive anything, rebuild from nothing, and create a life filled with people who truly loved her. Derek had tried to destroy her, but instead he had revealed her own strength. And that strength was going to carry her and Hope toward a future brighter than anything Derek could have given them. 2 years after Derek's disappearance, Naomi was running late for Hope's second birthday party when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Mitchell? This is Detective Sarah Rodriguez with the Portland Police Department. I'm calling about Derek Washington. Naomi's blood went cold. She pulled over to the side of the road, her hands shaking. Is he trying to contact me? Because there's a restraining order. No, ma'am. Mr. Washington has been arrested for embezzlement. It seems he's been stealing from his employer in Oregon. During processing, he made some interesting claims about wanting to make a deal. He says he has information about how his previous business was sabotaged. Naomi closed her eyes. Even from across the country, Derek was still trying to cause trouble. Detective Rodriguez, whatever Derek is claiming, I'm not interested in hearing it. He lost the right to involve me in his problems when he tried to beat me with a stick while I was pregnant. There was a pause. Ma'am, that's not in any of the reports I have here. Then you don't have complete reports? Naomi said firmly. If Derek wants to make deals with prosecutors, that's between him and the justice system. Please don't contact me about this again. After hanging up, Naomi sat in her car for a moment, processing the call. 2 years ago, news about Derek would have sent her into a panic spiral. Now, she felt nothing but a mild annoyance that he was still making poor choices. She arrived at Hope's party to find her apartment filled with laughter and the chaos of toddlers running around with chocolate cake on their faces. Cameron was on the floor building blocks with 3 two-year-olds, while Julian was in the kitchen helping other parents serve cake. Everything okay? Asked Maria, one of Naomi's closest friends from her parenting group. You look like you got some news. Derek got arrested in Oregon, Naomi said quietly. He's trying to cause trouble for my brothers. Maria's eyes flashed with anger. That man just won't quit, will he? It doesn't matter, Naomi realized as she spoke. He can't hurt us anymore. Whatever he says, whatever he does, it can't touch the life we've built here. And it was true. Naomi looked around her apartment, filled with friends who genuinely cared about her, colleagues who respected her work, neighbors who had become like family. Hope was thriving, confident and curious and surrounded by people who adored her. Derek had taken Naomi's old life, but she had built something infinitely better from the pieces. The party was in full swing when Cameron's phone buzzed. He read the message and smiled grimly. What is it? Julian asked. Derek's lawyer in Oregon wants to meet, Cameron said quietly. Apparently Derek is claiming that we ruined his business illegally and he wants to testify against us in exchange for a reduced sentence. Julian laughed. Let me guess, he doesn't understand that everything we did was completely legal? Business competition, public records research, and sharing factual information with potential clients, Cameron agreed. All perfectly legal. Should we be worried? Naomi asked, overhearing. Not even a little bit, Cameron said. Derek can make all the claims he wants. He operated without a license, used fake credentials, and committed fraud. We simply made sure people knew about it. Julian nodded. The prosecutor in Oregon is going to take one look at Derek's record and realize he's a career criminal trying to blame his victims for his problems. But Naomi wasn't thinking about Derek anymore. She was watching Hope toddle over to her, chocolate cake smeared across her chubby cheeks, arms raised to be picked up. Mama? Hope giggled and Naomi's heart melted like it did every single time. As the party continued around them, Cameron found himself talking to Dr. Martinez, Naomi's therapist, who had become a family friend over the past 2 years. It's remarkable, Dr. Martinez said, watching Naomi help Hope blow out her birthday candles. 2 years ago she could barely function. Now look at her. She was always strong, Cameron said. Derek just tried to convince her she wasn't. The children at her school adore her, Dr. Martinez continued. She has this gift for helping kids who have been through trauma feel safe again. I think it's because she understands what it's like to have your world fall apart and then have to rebuild it. Cameron smiled as he watched his sister. Naomi was glowing with happiness, surrounded by Hope's little friends and their parents, completely in her element. 3 hours later, after the last guest had left and Hope was napping, Naomi, Cameron, and Julian sat on the balcony with coffee and leftover cake. "Detective Rodriguez called me again," Naomi said. "Derek's lawyer wants to arrange a phone call. They think I might be willing to support his claims against you too." "What did you tell them?" Julian asked. "I told them that Derek lost the right to my support when he chose violence over love," Naomi said simply. "I told them that my brothers protected me when my husband tried to destroy me, and I will never apologize for having family who actually cares about me." Cameron reached over and squeezed Naomi's hand. "You know we'd do it all again, right? Every single day if that's what it took to keep you and Hope safe." "I know," Naomi said. "But I won't need you to. I'm not the same woman Derek tried to break. I know what I'm worth now." As if summoned by her voice, Hope appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes and looking for her mama. Naomi scooped her up and settled her on her lap. "Tell me the story," Hope demanded as she did every day. "Which story?" Naomi asked, though she already knew. "The princess story." Naomi smiled and began the story she had created for Hope, about a brave princess who got lost in a dark forest but found her way home with the help of her loyal knight brothers and her own unbreakable courage. "And did the princess live happily ever after?" Hope asked, even though she knew the ending. "The princess built her own happily ever after," Naomi corrected gently, "with people who loved her for exactly who she was." Hope clapped her hands and demanded the story again. As Naomi retold the tale, Cameron's phone buzzed with a final message from Oregon. Derek's deal had been rejected. His claims about illegal sabotage had been dismissed as the desperate lies of a career criminal. He would serve his full sentence for embezzlement with no reductions. Cameron deleted the message without mentioning it to Naomi. She didn't need to know that Derek was still trying to hurt them from prison. She had moved far beyond caring what Derek Washington did with his failures. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Hope had fallen asleep in Naomi's arms, and Julian was telling a story about his latest real estate project. Cameron looked at his sister and niece and felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with business success or financial achievements. They had won. Not just the war against Derek and Bethany, but something bigger and more important. They had proven that family loyalty was stronger than manipulation, that love was more powerful than cruelty, and that sometimes the best revenge was simply living well. Derek had tried to destroy Naomi, but instead he had given her the chance to discover exactly how strong, smart, and capable she really was. And now Naomi was raising a daughter who would grow up knowing that she deserved to be loved, protected, and valued exactly as she was. That was a victory worth more than any amount of money Cameron and Julian could ever earn. As the three siblings sat together on the balcony, watching the city lights begin to twinkle below them, they knew that whatever challenges the future might bring, they would face them together. Derek had learned too late that when you hurt a Mitchell, you don't just make an enemy, you make enemies out of a family that will move heaven and earth to protect each other. And the Mitchell family always won in the end.